Hello and welcome to Quick Chat. I'm Brian Walsh. Today we're going to focus on one way entrepreneurs can make their companies more attractive to Wisconsin investors. Joining us is Joey Frayne, Technical Investment Manager with Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, WEDC. He's here to talk about the Qualified New Business Venture Program, QNBV. Through this program, investors receive state income tax credits on investments made in QNBV certified companies. And today, Joey will fill us in on why your company should consider getting certified and what steps are needed to apply. So welcome, Joey. Let's start with a better introduction to you. Can you briefly tell us about your background and experience?
Sure, yeah. So as Brian said, my name is Joey Frayne, and thanks everyone for joining us this morning. I'm a technology investment manager here at the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, or more probably widely known as WEDC. I work in our division of entrepreneurship and innovation. So that's the division we have at WEDC to assist entrepreneurs. So looking to do that both via direct assistance programs, which we'll talk a little bit about today, as well as we work with a lot of partners, of which CTC is, to try to make sure we're hitting entrepreneurs across all spectrums, both technology based ones looking to raise capital to the Main Street entrepreneur that you're stopping into day to day in your community. I've been with WEDC for about 5.5 years. So 5.5 years on this team in this role the whole time. Kind of prior experience before WEDC, worked more in the private financial world, as well as did grow up with parents as entrepreneurs. So my parents were more on the Main Street side, but did grow up in a family business. So that's a little about my experience, and glad to be here today.
Okay, great. So you prepared some slides to give us an overview, and so I'll let you take it from here on presenting the slides, and then I'll probably have some questions along the way. And again, audience, if you have questions along the way, feel free to type them into the chat box, and we'll try and address them as we go, and we'll allow some time at the end for doing that as well. So go ahead, go for it, Joey.
Great. So yeah, so just kind of run here through a slideshow that we put together to kind of talk about what we do. So really looking for dreamers in our area. Startups are an engine for job growth. Innovation also creates high wage, high skill positions. Looking really to kind of build our programs around capitalizing on existing investments and assets we have here in Wisconsin. Looking to hopefully have some economic diversification, right? Really, Wisconsin's known for a lot of things traditionally, and I think startups can help us kind of widen. Obviously we can rely on creating stuff around what we're known for, but let's diversify kind of the opportunities here in Wisconsin, and look into help kind of put Wisconsin on the map in a competitive global environment. Here's just kind of an objective we have in our division. It's to advance Wisconsin's startup and emerging growth businesses by integrating a system of increased deal flow, entrepreneurial development support networks, and access to early stage capital and investment incentives. Strategy to do that is looking to connect opportunities to resources, looking to help close technical resource gaps, and looking to hopefully develop a framework to allow ideas to turn into viable businesses. As I said, Wisconsin's known for a lot, and I'd say when QNBV was created, and when a lot of what we did was created, it was really focused on a lot of companies out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, a lot of kind of bioscience type companies. But what we've seen as we've expanded our network is really some unique opportunities in diversifying that. So here's just kind of a list of the type of companies that we're working with in our direct assistance program. So like Brian said, the one thing we're here to talk about today, kind of the main program, is the QNBV program, or the Qualified New Business Venture Program. You might also hear it referred to as Act 255. So that's the bill that created the program. The program is a little unique to WEDC, as it is one of the few statutory programs we had. It was created via statute when WEDC was known as the Department of Commerce, and moved over to us as we moved into this public-private agency. Like I said, Act 255 was the bill that created it. It was created back in 2004, 2005, really with the thought process, again, seeing a lot of, seeing a lot of innovative businesses in Wisconsin, businesses that need to raise capital. And we know there's capital in Wisconsin, but that capital is generally conservative. So how can the state hopefully incent some of these, capital providers to be willing to put capital into, an early stage, very interesting, innovative business, but it's a high risk opportunity, right? High risk investment. So that's why the program was created. So who's it for? It's for innovative Wisconsin startups seeking equity investments. And what is the purpose? Investors are going to receive tax credits for investing in these qualified startups. So hopefully, lowering the barrier to get those funds, looking to both incent the investment from the investor side, as well as de-risk it a little bit on the front end via that tax credit. Like I said, created in 2005 by a statute, Act 255. What the credit is a 25% tax credit. So the investor will give the cash, or excuse me, give the company cash. They'll receive equity investment in that company, and for that investment, they're able to take a 25% tax credit. Looking targeted towards startup and emerging growth companies developing and commercializing new technology. It's actually 2 credits, and it can get really complicated. We don't need to do that today, but can later on, one-on-one or via questions. But there's 2 credits that we actually issue. One goes to angel investors. So think individuals or groups of individuals that are pulling capital together to make angel investments, like Wisconsin Investment Partners. Who I know Brian said, Andrea from them participated on a previous quick chat, or venture capital funds. So venture capital funds also are able to receive a separate credit. And really, I'd say the big kind of differentiating thing between the 2 credits, I guess, for anyone's information, is the angel credit is a non-transferable, non-sellable credit. So only going to be useful for someone with Wisconsin tax liability. That credit's set up to reduce Wisconsin personal income tax liability. The venture capital credit that we issue to funds that we have certified, that credit is actually able to be monetized, so it can be sold or transferred. So, a lot of how venture funds are set up, they might have an LP base that can't utilize the credit, so they have nowhere to pass it out. Or we work with a lot of out-of-state venture funds that are, their LP base is, made up of out-of-state investors / institutional investors, so they do have the ability to monetize that credit. So it can get kind of pretty detailed. I don't know if that's super important to the company, but just to have kind of a general idea. Up to $3 million in credits can be issued to the company per the statute. So you can raise up to $12 million under the program. One of the big goals of the company is, supporting companies creating high wage, high skill jobs. And then there's some things in the statute that are called out as not able or not eligible. So I have the list here. I'm not going to read through it. And I did send Brian the slides, happy for those to be shared.
Before you move on from this slide,
Sure.
I do have a couple questions. So how loosely defined is the angel investor, for example? So if I have Aunt Lillian who has money stuffed under a mattress and she wants to invest in my company, what does she need to do to be qualified for, to get these credits?
Yeah, great question. So, we basically, there's a form that any investor that wants to receive the credits need to fill out called the Accredited Sophisticated Investor Form. So they're either certifying themselves as accredited or that they understand the risk of the investment. So really, the SEC rules are going to kind of drive who you can take money from. So we're not going to, I guess we're not going to get involved in that. We're just going to require an investor to either sign off as they're, either being accredited or they understand that this is, a high risk investment. So I guess that's what we considered a sophisticated investor. So yeah, and I guess the other thing, kind of your question, can Aunt Lily invest? There is some stuff in our program guidelines. So the program is geared towards looking to incent, outside investors. So we do have a restriction in there. Who actually, I don't think Aunt Lily wouldn't be included, but any investor, so anyone that has 20% ownership of the company. So say, for an example, a founder has 20% ownership. Anyone that's closely related to them is going to be ineligible for the credit. So we define closely related as spouse, grandparent, parent, sibling, a child, stepchild, grandchild. So Aunt Lily would be excluded from that. But again, we're really looking to incent outside investment, not kind of closely related internal investment.
Okay. Now there's a question in here, and how is technology company defined?
Yeah, so I think maybe we get into that in a later side, but yeah, really just looking for a company, how it's defined in the statute is looking for a company that has developed some sort of innovation, right? So it's relatively loosely defined, but I get examples of what we're looking. We're looking for proprietary technology, someone that has something innovative, proprietary, whether that's a drug, software product, therapeutic. I mean, so it's pretty loosely related. And I'd say, the best way I can explain it is we're really looking for venture backable companies. And, to be honest, venture funds, most sophisticated investors, they're not going to be interested in investing with companies that don't have the technology or the innovation to meet the statutory requirements, because those companies just don't have the growth opportunities that they're looking for. So I say pretty loosely defined, but the statute, like you said, looking for some sort of proprietary innovation technology.
Okay. And then
my assumption is any company working with CTC is probably going to fit into that technology requirement, kind of knowing knowing your guys's the makeup of the companies that you work with at CTC. So
and then the point about up to $3 million in credits per company. So if I invest $12 million in company A, I can get $3 million in tax credits, and then I can also invest in another company and get. Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to.
Yeah. So our program, some other states do have some restrictions on how much in credits a specific investor can get. We don't. It's really kind of up to the company. So if one person gets to all 3 million, that's fine. That investor can get 20 million in credits if they want, but ultimately, they're going to have the tax liability to make sense for them to use the credit. Like I said, from an individual standpoint, not sellable, not transferable. I guess one thing to mention is it is able to be carried forward for up to 15 years. So if you don't have the liability to use your credit in, year one when you receive it, the investor can continue to carry it forward to, take it as they move through their tax filings.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so let's move on. Yeah, kind of, so what I said, kind of that question here's the qualification criteria and really kind of high level what the statute's asking for. So I said, engage in developing, an innovative product, process, or service. So, looking for some sort of proprietary innovative technology. Companies, since it's a Wisconsin state benefit, the statute requires the company to be headquartered in Wisconsin and 51% of the employees to be in state by both headcount and payroll. Has to be defined as a startup or early stage business, and we do that by a company having fewer than 100 employees and not been in operation for more than 10 years. And then the other thing kind of there is company, seeking equity finance hasn't received more than 10 million in private financing, at time of application. And then also, looking for companies that have a high potential for, job creation and or capital investment in Wisconsin.
So let me jump in here with a question too. So the location-based eligibility requirements. So we at CTC have found that those aren't always easy as they might seem with startups. And so maybe just a few follow-up questions here. So if let's say there's a two-person company and there's one founder in Wisconsin and one founder in another state, Minnesota, for example, they're 50-50. So they're not, are they too early for certification at this point because they don't really have a 51%?
Yeah, so it's really, it's a little kind of maybe too early. So it's really going to depend on like what the company's doing, right? So if it's a company with, so how we view employment is either, you're paying someone a W-2, you're, actually on the payroll of the company. So you're, it's W-2 employees and or, a lot of the companies we work with on the early end are maybe LLC. So those employees are getting paid via like say a guaranteed payment. So we're really kind of looking at that. So in the case, say these two founders, this is a side hustle. They're not employees of the company, they're not being paid. No, it wouldn't be too early for certification. But as they bring employees on and, give us reporting, they need to meet that 51% threshold. But in the case, if they are actually employees of the company, they're W-2, wage employees, or they're, members in LLC getting guaranteed payments, yeah, they wouldn't qualify because they're not at that 51% threshold. So it's a little kind of case by case. And, really you kind of have to get in the weeds of the company to kind of see what they're actually doing because, I'm sure, startups, kind of, what their employees are actually receiving to be employees can be kind of all over the map, right? A lot of them it's side gigs, they have other jobs, they're not actually on the payroll. So
Has it been, has that gotten more difficult with COVID, with more people working remotely to kind of determine where people, what the nexus is, where people are actually working?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, it has got more difficult, and I probably had more questions about this in the last, since COVID hit than I did in my 5 years prior, right? Companies like, hey, is there any flexibility? And unfortunately, it's statutory, so we don't have flexibility at WEDC. There need to be a statutory change, and I think really there's kind of two trains of thought around that. Is yeah, maybe the statute does need to get updated because of this new world we're living in. Is maybe one train of thought. But then on the flip side, I think a lot of people are like, well, it is a Wisconsin benefit. Part of the, like I said here, kind of the criteria or kind of the benefit of the program is the economic development return we get by having the jobs in the state. And we're only asking for 51%. So you have kind of 49% play. So maybe we shouldn't change it. Yeah, I get the world's different. People are working remote, but it's not like we're asking for 100%. So you kind of have two sides of that argument. So yeah, it's been more difficult. A lot of questions in the last year. But ultimately, the legislature would have to be willing to make a statutory change. And I think that change would be driven by, companies, lobbyists, tech councils, people like that. So, and like I said, I think there's two trains of thought, and I don't know which one would prevail in the argument. So. Good. Any other questions?
No, that's it for that slide.
All right, cool. So hop on here. So yeah, we're gonna application process. So kind of how generally it will work is you'll have a, usually I guess maybe a step back. How do we find companies? We find it via service providers we work with, investors, other companies we previously worked with, or in normal times. We're at a lot of events, right? If there's conferences, there's, in-person things, me or someone from our team is generally there. So meet a lot of companies there. So, that's usually how companies find us. Or, I guess we do get cold contacted via our website, right? We have a contact us on our website. We'll get a lot of companies via that. So that's kind of the initial contact. We'll have a, look to set up kind of an initial conversation with the company. Kind of before that, we'll ask the company to send us a copy of a, exact summary, pitch deck, business plan that they have, it kind of whatever they have, just to give us a little bit of overview on the company. And really what that allows us to do is say, hey, you're starting a coffee shop, you're not going to fit the program, or yeah, you're, doing something that's, definitely looks like it's going to fit. Company will then, after that conversation, we take a look at the documentation. We'll send over our application to the company. They'll submit that back in with, kind of a business plan, pitch deck, exec summary, kind of overviewing the company. Really looking, I guess what we're looking for is similar detail that an investor is going to look for. So I guess we want to, just make sure the company is investment ready from the standpoint they can kind of provide investors what the investors are going to need to look at before they make an investment. I'll do a review, make a recommendation. Yes, company A meets the statutory requirements of the program. We pass it on to our underwriting group, who's going to do a second review, make sure, they feel comfortable we're hitting statutory requirements, have to do background checks on, companies, any principal, any founders, or any people owning over 20%, just to make sure there's a reason why we can't work with you as a state, semi-state agency. And then every week we have a meeting with our management team where our secretary, CEO, gets an overview of the projects and they sign off on it. At that point, we'll let the company know they've been approved, send the contract out for execution. All our companies that we've worked with are listed on our website. There's kind of two deadlines once you're approved. Every year for your investors to receive the credits, you're going to have to submit some paperwork. I mentioned the form the investor has to sign earlier. Have to submit some paperwork so we can actually get the investor the document they need to claim the credit on their tax return. So if an investment was made, for instance, any investments made in 2021, the documentation we're going to need to issue that credit out to the investor, we require it to be into us by March 31st of 2022. And then for the other thing that we require is we do our certifications on a 1 year 1-year certification. We don't require companies to reapply every year, but we do ask companies to submit an annual report every year. And that annual report's doing a couple of things. One, making sure you're still meeting the statutory requirements, still doing what you said you were doing as a company. So, again, making sure you still meet the requirements of the program. And then it gives us a lot of data, right? We're going to ask for, job numbers, investment numbers, sales revenue, things like that. Gives us a lot of good data points that we put in an annual report that we can send out to our stakeholders every year to show the benefits of the program. So, let the legislature, know kind of the economic development return aspects of the program, why it's important that the state supports this program.
I see a question in here from Lena. Is there a maximum number of companies that can get the QNBV each year?
Not a maximum number. No. Yeah, we have probably at this point 250 in the portfolio kind of certified. We probably do anywhere from 30 to 40 new certifications a year, but no maximum amount of companies. I guess to that point though, we've never hit it. There is a maximum amount of credits that can be issued to investors. So 30 million is the number that can be issued out to credits. The most we've ever issued is around 19 million. So we haven't even pushed close to the cap at this point. So I guess that's a problem to maybe worry about later. I think we have some time before we're going to be pushing that cap. So if we would get to the cap, it's a first come, first serve, right? So, first, as the requests come in, we approve the credits, and if we would hit 30 million, we would just do it on a first come, first serve basis. But I don't see that happening anytime in the near future.
So so basically there's some paperwork, business plan, that kind of thing that they submit, fill out an application. But is there anything kind of broader that a company should do to prepare themselves in advance for applying for certification? Is there a point where they would know that that this is a good time to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, a good time to do it is, hey, we want to start raising money, right? You don't want, if you start talking to companies investors in Wisconsin, they're probably going to ask pretty early on in those conversations if you're QNBV certified. So, might as well, either have the application in process and or have it out of the way, when you want to go have those conversations. So, and what you should do to prepare, I think it's, I'm sure when you're taking part in, stuff with, a CTC, or if you're in another accelerator, they're really trying to tell you what, give you some guidance on being investor ready. So, I mean, I think we're not looking for anything. We're probably looking for less than an investor is going to look for. So I think always continue to be developing, that pitch deck of, information on your company, who your customers might be, what you're looking at for financial projections, what you have, with those projections, how are you getting to those numbers? What's your assumptions, as you're a company, you're historical. So I think for any company, my advice is always, from day one, like start building that data room of important information around your company. If you have patents, information around that, because, ultimately with, any company, your goal is either, to exit via going public or being bought out. And to get there, there's gonna be a lot of information to need. So, I tell companies just start that data room from day one. So as you get to investors, you just have a data room. You can kind of shoot them any information they're gonna look for. And then as you're kind of moving towards exit, you have that data there for acquirers to look at. So
I see a question from Dwayne. Dwayne, I think your question aligns well with a future slide. So we'll kind of come back to that question.
Yeah, I don't know if I have an answer on that. We'll see.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So here's an impact from 2019. So we're still kind of rolling through 2020 numbers. So I don't have 2020 info for you. So we'll see where we're at. I think we're pushing ahead of how many credits we issued. So the companies that participated in the program in 2019 raised just under $500 million, and that includes qualifying investments, so investment that we actually issue credits out to, other private investment, which could be like out-of-state investors, things like that, debt, grant funding, which debt isn't going to be eligible for the credit, so it actually converts into equity, and grant funding is not eligible. So of that 488 million the companies raised, we issued 14.6 million in credits. So what's that leave us? A little over about 60 million in qualifying investment. To the previous question, we certified 37 new companies. Like I said, kind of 20 to 40 is kind of, I'd say, generally what we do each year. Certified 37 companies last year. Annual wage, average annual salary for the companies in the program was just over 73,000. As you can see, is well over the mean wage, and that kind of drives to the economic development return this program provides to the state. these companies are creating, solid jobs, paying solid wages.
And so you really don't know the rate of certification
So I'd say like there's very few rejections last year, like in a year. So I'd say we might have been 37 for 37 in 2019. I can't remember offhand any rejections. So I'd say the rate, and again, that's why we want to have conversations with company. We're only going to encourage companies that we know meet the statutory requirement and apply. So this is kind of my best example. Someone comes to me and says, hey, I'm opening up a coffee shop in Madison. It's just not going to, it doesn't fit the venture funding model and it doesn't fit the statute. So I'm not going to have that company apply because I know they're not going to get certified. So I'd say very rarely do we have a company apply that's not going to qualify based on kind of the type of business they are. What can kind of generally trip us up on qualification is kind of that background check, right? So if we do the background check and we see the company or maybe one of those principal owners has an issue, I say generally the most common thing that could trip it up is there's an issue with DOR, right? The company maybe has a tax lien out on it or a founder has a tax lien. We need that to be cleared up before we can move forward. So, in my 5.5 years here, we probably rejected, I don't know, half dozen at most companies. And it's usually because of something happening with like, a lawsuit or, something with another state agency that we need to get cleared up. So it's kind of not a no forever. It's a no till you kind of get good with other state agencies. So.
Okay. Yeah. No more questions I'm seeing on this one.
Yeah. So again, here's just kind of that breakdown of funding. So like I said, just under 60 in qualifying, about 40 million in grants, and then 391 in other private investment, which like I said is debt investment or kind of out-of-state investment that's not going to be eligible for the credit.
Do you know, going back a slide, do you know, maybe you said this, but that, let's say that 14 million that received credits, do you know how many actual investors that translates to?
So just like, this is like, don't hold me to this, but I'd say we issue like, I don't know, we probably do 400, 500, 600. Like it's probably let's just say 400 to 600 per year kind of credits we're issuing out. So they might not be unique investors, but it's a pretty, big chunk of investors that make the investment. And I know Dwayne's question was like the percentage of companies certified that actually get investment. I don't have that number off the top of my head. I probably could kind of dig it up, but I will say with, that, like, I guess that number though, it could be not all companies certified maybe are actually looking for money in that year. So it's not that like of the ones that apply, 50% of get money that, there could be a lot of reasons why they don't get money. One, just, investors aren't interested, but it also could be, maybe this year, it's just not a year this company's investing, right? Because we have companies that obviously aren't raising every year. So I don't have that number. I could probably dig it up if I looked hard enough. So. I mean, but I will say this is going to, it'll make you more attractive to investors, but it's, again, it's not a guarantee you're going to get investment, right? I mean, ultimately you have to be a value to the investors. Investors are looking for, innovation, and they're looking for that outsized return, right? So they need to see that the market's there, that, that the team's there. So, I think this obviously helps in Wisconsin because it will make you attractive that investors can get the credit. But ultimately, I think if a company is certified or not certified, their decision is going to be made on if it meets their criteria as an investor. So I guess, Brian asked me to talk about QNBV, but I thought it'd be quick to just talk about another program we have to help out.
I'm glad you did, because I was going to ask you about this anyway. So
yeah, to companies. So we do have a venture debt fund, which we call the Technology Development Loan Program. And that's WEDC's way to invest alongside these investors getting credit. So we invest about, I'd say 5.5 million per year. So do anywhere from kind of 10 to 20 deals, looking for companies similar to QNBV eligible companies. So, looking for, growth oriented, innovative companies. We'll do an investment of 100 to 750,000. Drive to that amount in a couple ways. Number one, stage a business. Number two is we want to provide 20 to 25% of the funding round. So stage a business, pre-revenue companies, we can invest up to 250. 500,000 for companies that are going to market, and up to 750 for companies that are kind of in that growth stage. And then for every dollar we put in, looking for $4 of match capital. Our average loans around kind of that 250, 275. Like I said, we're looking for $4 to match $1 we invest. So we won't release our funding out until that match is raised. And at the time of last year, kind of when we collected our number, so we had just over 100 loans active in the portfolio. 2019, we did 16 loans for 4.1 million. Like I said, we allocate about 5 to 5.5 million per year. Generally, we have interest to fill that amount, but sometimes it just might be challenging for us to contract that full amount kind of in the fiscal year. So, I'm guessing last year we probably had 5 million. We probably did over the calendar or the fiscal year. We probably had applications in for our budget, but we didn't actually contract them to the next fiscal year. Like I said, about 100 active loans. Those companies generated about 175 million in revenue. 82 companies in that portfolio, so we can do more than one loan with a company. I had about 1,500 employees, just over 60,000 for the average salary there, and they raised about 100 million in funding last year. I think you had some questions here, Brian.
Yeah, there's a question here about also about eligibility. So is the less than 10-year rule strictly enforced for eligibility?
For TDL, it was TDL or technology development loans on a statutory program, so we have some room there. But for QNBV, that's a statutory requirement. So yes, strictly enforced. How do we determine the age of the business? We're really going to look at the easiest way for us to do it is look at your DFI registration and see, when you register your company with DFI. So, but yeah, it's a statutory requirement, so don't have any flexibility there.
That's all I'm seeing in there.
Yeah. Did you have some? I think did you have some questions on the loan or?
I had some questions about what are typical interest rates, duration of loans, collateral, like kind of typical terms.
Yeah. I think So can go over that quick. So interest rate generally, it's all going to be determined in the underwriting process, but I'd say generally we're looking right now, we have a 6% interest rate, generally duration, 7-year term, kind of looking to make up that term around kind of what makes sense from a cash flow perspective for the business. Collateral, we do a couple of things from a collateral standpoint. Is we will take a GBSA, general business security agreement, out on the assets of the business. And then the other thing we do is we'll ask for a portion of our loan to be able to be converted to equity. So generally 20% of the loan, we have the ability to, it's in lieu of payments back. We'll say, hey, we want to convert this into equity to take advantage of the upside. So it's more of kind of a portfolio de-risking mechanism versus like pure collateral.
And typically administered by banks?
No, loans administered by us. So we actually administer.
Okay.
So they're housed within WEDC. You're reporting to us, you're paying us, you're contracting with us.
Okay.
And then you guys time frame. I think I saw a time frame question earlier too for both. Generally, our time frame, I'd say for both programs is kind of 6 to 8 weeks. Let's say from time to to getting approved. Not necessarily that it takes us that long to actually look through it. It's just more of a queuing thing. WEC is administering multiple programs across multiple divisions, so just takes us some time to get to the application, and then kind of funds the bank account. Obviously, a little longer. I'd say we're probably look at 3-ish months from application till we have the funds in the bank account. That's if the capital's actually been raised, right? Sometimes we might commit and the company still needs to go raise some or all that match capital. So just a little info on the portfolio. This is from 2019. We had 315 businesses assisted, about 3,500 jobs. Already went over kind of the average salary, total payroll of 157 million. New capital generation of $1 billion. So these are just some numbers we like to push out to the legislature, across the state, just to show the benefits of the program. Kind of one last thing to kind of hop into. I talked about it a little bit earlier, is that there's actually 2 tax credits available to investors. The angel tax credit, which goes to the individual or angel groups. This credit's, can be a non-sellable refundable tax credit, offsets Wisconsin tax liability. So only going to be useful for that investor in Wisconsin that has Wisconsin liability, not required to be a Wisconsin resident, but they have to be filing a Wisconsin tax return to take advantage of it. The credit has to be claimed in the year it's received. So if you get a 2020 credit, you got to claim it on your 2020 taxes. But if you can't use it all, you are able to carry it forward for up to 15 years. Tax advisor would be able to give an investor a little more detail on how that all works mechanically. I just kind of know on the periphery. Like I said, venture funds. So we do have, roughly 175 to 100 venture funds that we've actually qualified as a venture fund. It's a true venture fund. They receive the early stage seed credit. That credit's issued for the same, cash or equity investment in a QNBV certified company. And that credit can be sold or transferred. And there is a marketplace out there, investors looking to buy the credit.
I think I had a possible question about what's that marketplace look like, but I think let's move on.
Yeah, I mean, it's really,
I'd
say the people looking for it are high net worth individuals, a lot of insurance companies. We kind of stay out of the marketplace, but if you have an investor that's looking to sell their credit, we can connect them with some people that would be looking to buy it. Is kind of how it would work. So you don't a lot of the funds already have those relationships. If they don't, we'll connect them with people that can look to buy it, is I guess probably the easiest answer there.
Okay.
Resources, here's just kind of some resources for investors are out there. You have the Tech Council Investor Network, and even for companies a little bit, like, I always encourage companies to connect with the Tech Council Investor Network. We're not necessarily in position to match companies with investors because we're, state affiliated, but, they can, maybe give you a little better idea of some investors that might be interested in the type of company you have. You have the Angel Capital Association, there's the Wisconsin Venture Capital Association, there's a National Venture Capital Association, there's a Wisconsin, there's some syndication meetings. I guess in normal times, investors, after a lot of the events, will get together to try to syndicate around deals. And then a newer group that's formed is the Wisconsin Startup Coalition, which again would be, I think, a good resource for companies. Kind of these middle ones are more for the investors. We do have a portfolio listed on our website. Right here's a link. So it's going to show you kind of a list of all the companies that we're currently working with, either TDL or QNBV. Here's just kind of an example. Work with a lot of partners, as I said earlier. So, the programs I talked about today is what I work on, looking to direct assist companies, but also looking to work with partners. You can see CTCs here to, make sure we're helping all entrepreneurs. And then here's our team. So Aaron's our VP, leads the team. Chris and myself work on these direct assistance programs. Chris is our senior technology investment manager. I'm the technology investment manager. So our role is really directly working with companies on QNBV, TDL, and kind of making connections otherwise. And then Ed Javier, Vincent Rice, they both are on our team, kind of working more on the partners. So, they'd be more of the relationship between CTC would be with, Ed or Vincent. All those partners, they're really looking to kind of grow entrepreneurs through partners across the state. So that's all I had for you today. So I know Brian maybe has a few more other questions. Happy to answer any of the questions people have. Brian has a slide deck. If he wants to share it, more than happy for him to do that, as well as my contact information if someone would want to set up some kind of one-on-one time to chat. So
great. All right.
Appreciate time.
Yeah. So anyone out there in the audience have any questions, any additional questions? And you can feel free to, you don't have to type them in. You can unmute yourself if you like. I'll just give you a few seconds to chime in.
Hello, this is Dwayne again with another question.
Yep, go for it, Dwayne.
I'm sure it varies, of course, but how are equity investments and business valuations calculated on technology startups? What types of structures have you seen in the past for equity investment?
Yeah, so I mean, that's really going to be kind of a conversation between the company and the investor. And I guess I don't want to say advice I would get, not advice, but just kind of maybe thought I would give around it is, I think the cleaner you can kind of have those terms and like the cleaner your cap table is going to set you up for success downstream. One thing we tend to see is companies that have maybe too high of a valuation early on, or just a really complicated cap table with people with, multiple share classes and things like that, it becomes problematic as you try to dive into, institutional investors, right? Once you start talking to institutional venture funds, they're really looking for a clean cap table. There's going to be certain things they need to move forward with an investment. And if it's your company versus a company, your company's clean, the other company just has a messy cap table, and kind of all else equal, the clean company is most likely to get the investment. But it's like I said, it's really going to be kind of a conversation between you and the investor. What we see, I'd say generally for the investors on their first rounds, they kind of go 3 routes. They might do a safe investment, which is a simple agreement for future equity where you're kind of punting on that valuation. The other way to kind of punt on valuation is do a convertible note investment that's going to convert, based on milestones or kind of a certain time frame. Or we do see, companies kind of in the initial investment do a priced equity round, and that's where you're going to have to determine kind of valuation. So, I guess you always hear, probably companies always say valuations are too low. Investors probably always say valuations are too high, right? So you guys just got to figure out what you can live with kind of on both sides.
One more question from the audience, if anyone has one. Okay, Joey, I'm going to wrap up by asking you maybe just say a few words about Start in Wisconsin, speaking of resources.
Yeah, so Start in Wisconsin is a resource that, and I guess I'll preface this, that would not super involved. Ed was kind of the one that spearheaded on our team, but really working with UW Extension, I believe, was a big partner. Some partners here in the state. We came up with we worked with an outside organization to create this, I guess, lack of a website, Start in Wisconsin, which is really just kind of a resource guide, really looking to, since I've been here, we've always tried to find different ways to just have a spot where startups can look for resources. So, I think events are listed on there, different type of resources. I know, for instance, like one group I'm involved with here in Madison is 1 Million Cups, which kind of a little inactive this time. At this point, we only do once a month virtual, but in normal times, we'll do once a week in person at the Spark building. We're Starting Blocks here in Madison. An entrepreneur will have a chance to kind of pitch their idea or give a presentation on their idea, get some feedback from, community members. So I know, for instance, my role with that as an organizer, we have ourselves set up on the Start in Wisconsin as a resource provider to give you an opportunity to come, present your startup, as well as, once our events are on, or I guess become more regular, we'd have those events listed. So it's really just a resource for entrepreneurs. If you really want to kind of dive in more to it, Ed on our team would probably be your best contact, and I'm happy to make that connection if needed.
Okay, any one last word, anything else you want the entrepreneurs to know here in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like the thing I always like to say is I think we have definitely a growing startup ecosystem, but the thing I like about the fact we're growing is there's a lot of people kind of out there willing to help. So, I don't think we're to the point now where people are just so competitive. So, just focus on what they do. You can find a lot of people that are willing to help. So, I may have last kind of thing is, the reason we do these presentations, is because we want people to contact us, right? So happy to talk with anyone on the call, anyone that watches this, via the recording, happy to connect with anyone and, see if there's ways that me or WDC can help you, or if there's just something else you're looking for, hopefully there's a connection to be made. So I guess the advice is don't be afraid to reach out to the people willing to help, because I think you'll find a lot of people willing to help.
Oh, great. And I just put your email address in the chat box if anyone wants it handy. So thanks, Joey, for helping us understand these programs and benefits of getting them done. And to close out, before saying goodbye, I want to remind our audience that the CTC is a Wisconsin state-funded resource to help you navigate a path to commercialization. We offer one-on-one counseling on accessing federal commercialization grants, SBIR, STTR, microgrants to aid in the proposal writing process, pre-submission panel reviews, and lean startup programming to help you get your innovative ideas to market. So please don't hesitate to schedule a free counseling session with us. We're happy to help. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks again, Joey. We'll see you on the next CTC Quick Chat.